Well, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, not only to our physical live attendees, but also to our online attendees, and also to those that will be watching this on a recorded video later in the week. My name is Irvine Delgado. I'm the CEO of Beyond Technology Education. We want to first of all thank the Lutheran Conference for hosting this meeting. Obviously, Rachel, who's not with us today, but Aaron Lucas, who's been helping us with coordinating, and of course, Kim Violet, who I thought ran the place, but she told me that she doesn't. It seems like she does. But anyway, a little background. When we first started planning this event, the virus situation was at a different level. We thought live events were going to be up and going. We had just done the event in Palm Desert, so we thought things would be great. And obviously, things changed a little bit. So a lot of our attendees are going to be online. We're watching via video. And then we did merge our Northern California event, which Charlie was running, with our Southern California event. So we're here live in Irvine. If you don't know Irvine, Southern California, very vibrant community. UCI is here, Concordia University is here. It's kind of between LA and San Diego, and it's a very vibrant hub in Orange County. If you haven't been here, I highly encourage you to check it out. But today, we're going to be having 4 different speakers come up, all about education technology. And to start the day off, well, let me mention one other thing. We do want this to be an interactive forum, if at all possible. There is a chat feature within the software, the Zoom software. I will be reading your chats. Now, normally, I would just read back your question. However, if you're interested in actually us giving you access to your camera and you want to chat live and give your feedback to us directly, let me know that in the chat. Put it in little hyphen marks live, please, and then I will, Aaron will let you come in live and give us your input. But with that said, I'm going to bring up our first presenter. Charlie's our Northern California Regional Manager and manages several schools in the Bay Area. He was a school principal at one time in the private schools in the Catholic system up there in the Bay Area. And I'll let Charlie introduce himself further and start the presentation.
All right. Thank you. Welcome. And just logistically, in terms of the slides, is that going to come? Okay, great. All right. Well, it's great to be here. And as Ernie mentioned, when we started brainstorming this process, we really wanted to have an opportunity to connect with principals and school leaders, and specifically, we wanted to target and invite schools that have educating the whole child as a focal point. So many of the school partners that are either online or in person are faith-based schools, private schools, and it's good to have that kind of just target that focus, so we have kind of a common language and a common model, if you will, because educational models are so vastly different in some aspects. But I think in this case, we can all agree that we want to educate the whole child and we want to keep them safe. So we started, my presentation wants to have a focus on creating a safe and responsible digital school community. Oh, yeah, thank you, sorry. So used to having masks on, following safety protocols, right? We all want to keep our children safe at all times. And as a former school principal, safety is paramount. And for so many years and decades, being a school principal, when you want to keep your students safe, you think of it in terms of a physical location. Students come and you partner with parents and you protect the children and you educate them in a way that that they're safe. Well, as you move forward and as we learned, through this pandemic and using technology, that we also need to have that mindset when we're communicating using digital devices and tools. And so even from less than 10 years ago when I was a school principal and I was bringing in technology, and I thought this is really a great way for students to be engaged, and they can really take their learning and make it a little more individualized. We can track their progress. We can, you know, analyze how well they're reading and writing and what all the different standards are, and we can have standardized testing. But what you didn't realize, which kind of came up from, let's see it, okay, is that when we have to be connected and our students are now in an online environment, we have to really kind of focus in on what kinds of information are getting to our students, and the skill set that they need is even more significant as far as how they use the tools and how they discern information. So I took this picture here, kind of harkens back to what we feel like is a little more innocent time. We've got our students in rows, we've got the material, you've got a teacher there. The teacher is the sage on the stage, and the information that's going to the students is transmitted through the teacher, who's the expert. And all the materials are there, and it's provided by the school. So in that aspect, the school has a lot of control over the information. Well, which is great, but when we're using technology, there's much more information out there. But what happens is now we have students that are online, and now we have to almost kind of guide them by the side and make sure that they're getting the information they need, and they also understand the information, and they can understand and discern, is it information that's helpful to them, or if this is something that they need to be careful about. So as I just through this pandemic time, really, oops, I went the wrong way, really had me thinking, because when I was a school principal, again, I thought bringing in one-to-one devices was really great, because now students have the ability to kind of work at their own pace, and we can track their progress. As we went through the pandemic, suddenly our school community is no longer just confined to our physical location. Now we have students and families, and they're all scattered about. And so this is where I really wanted to bring on the discussion and bring on the dialogue, and certainly everyone around here and everyone online. We want to keep this interactive, because these are reflections that I had and questions that I want to get from other school leaders as far as where we think education is going to go, and what sort of information do we really need to impart onto our students so that they become future leaders, and they also understand how to be safe online. So some of the questions I had as I was thinking through this is, when we went through the pandemic, how did our school community change? All right. Some things obviously perhaps were a bit of a challenge. I don't think anybody wants to go back into the pandemic. I mean, we were all just kind of thrown to it. We all kind of did our best as far as managing that process. But if you think about the connections that teachers normally make with students, that perhaps that transmission, it was a bit more of a challenge, because the students aren't just coming into our classroom every day, and we can't just have the ongoing communication and develop those relationships. So how do we do that when suddenly all the communication is going online, and it's going back and forth through devices? So how did the school communities change? And then also, what did the distance learning reveal about your school community? Obviously, there are great strengths in terms of having a school community where people are together, educators, parents, students, working together. When that learning is spread apart, where there are things within the school community, or maybe just how you manage our resources that suddenly changed. And then as we're starting to come back and now we have students in person, how do we meet the demands of educating the whole child? This forum is decidedly different than it would have been, 3 years ago, but there are opportunities there. It's great having a bunch of educators in person, but then also we have the opportunity to have people from other locations that can join the process. So if we can take some of the things we've learned and maybe have some of these conversations, we can figure out how to forge even a better path ahead. So we want to make sure this is interactive. So with the different presentations, I understand we kind of have a bit of a broadcast model, but we want a lot of time for question and answer and discussion. I think that's really where conversation can really be beneficial to all of us, and we certainly can learn from all of us. So if there's things coming up, and Ernie, I think you're moderating, if there's different questions that come up that are relevant to what we're discussing now, or maybe they also can be tabled for our future Q&A. I brought up this slide. This is a Beyond Technology Education slide, which kind of just goes over the pillars of setting a technology platform at a school. And so this is our school-wide integration model. And I just found it to be a good model because it covers kind of all the pillars of what, as a school principal or a school administration, what you need to have with respect to technology. And I just find it interesting, and it's definitely the categories you need to keep in mind to have a technology platform. Obviously your infrastructure, and then within that, how you manage those resources. But again, with the lens of coming through a pandemic, some of these things are still there and relevant, but they also have kind of shifted to a more decentralized focus with technology. So something to keep in mind. We're building schools together, but we also need to think about past lessons that we had from the pandemic. Any questions so far? Yeah.
If I wanted to find more information about that, where would I go on the internet?
So this is from our website, and it's something we've had for 20 years, and really it's just, again, it gives you a focus as far as when you're creating your school site and you want to give your teachers tools. How do you manage those tools efficiently so teachers are able to get online or access their systems? And then also you want to integrate a technology curriculum that teaches the students tools. And so it kind of spirals from each other. If you have a sound technology infrastructure that allows people to get on and be connected and get their work done, then we can give the students the ability to engage and work on projects, and it helps the education come alive. And with that, kind of this extra layer that I see is kind of an emerging need for students, is to take information and be able to discern it and understand what's real and what's not real, and how to take the information and make good decisions. So that's where the technology curriculum, the lesson integration, where you can combine the grade level curriculum and match it with your technology resources. and then maybe it makes it come alive. So this is on our company website.
Beyond tech
Yeah.
Thank you.
So moving forward, what I see and what I'd love to have some discussions around as far as our school mission, our educational mission to educate the whole child, which is always there, and it's true today as it has been. What sort of tools, what sort of skill sets do we now need to make certain that our students can understand for kind of this new reality? I think with the pandemic, but also a lot of the rhetoric that was out there in the world, I think what was different from when I was a principal and just focused on, I gotta get my kids' devices, I gotta get them on, I gotta get them engaged, I gotta get them those 21st century skills. But now also all this information and technology revolving around social media and things of that really just went crazy. And those are things that as a school, we need to bring in those lessons. We need to bring in those conversations, and we need to have those discussions with our students because they need to be prepared and they need to be equipped to have the skills to understand what's happening, but also know how to protect themselves, give them the tools necessary that they can kind of navigate this reality where there's a kind of unfiltered information out there. And it is our job to guide them and to educate them. And I feel we just have to do that in more of with real world applications. So that's kind of how I see creating a safe digital school community. It coincides with what we've always done, bringing our kids into the classroom and protecting them there. But it even now, the scope goes outward, and we need to have lessons and we need to have discussions and conversations around that that engage our students in a very real and meaningful way. So that's kind of the initial focus of where I wanted to go and have these conversations. Was there any feedback, questions, or discussion at this point? All right, well, we'll circle back to this. Ernie?
Transition.
recording in progress.
Okay, thank you, Charlie. I would like to kind of ask the group, just can you give me one idea of where things have really shifted from 2 years ago to today? We've been through one of the most massive changes, not only in society, but in our schools that we've seen, and we've had to adapt. What is one thing that, if you wanted to share with all the people that are watching and be watching the video later in the week, and also to this group, if you want to give one word of wisdom or something that's really taking you by surprise, why don't we start here? And just something that COVID has driven you to change that's made a difference, or you didn't know that it would cause such a problem?
Well, for me, I shifted from one school to another, and the school that I left was very well prepared, way in advance, from the standpoint of how we did technology, how we, prior to the school that I'm currently, technology is less, I don't want to say behind by any means, because what we've been doing this year is very fundamental based, foundational. At the same time, we're looking at ways of how to support the learner, and through technology, as well as, if you want to call it old school, we're going through the whole old school model this year. And that's been extremely helpful for our teachers to understand that, that old school wisdom doesn't need to get cast out. I think too many people with the pandemic we pivoted, we felt like we had to throw everything out and start all over, and that wasn't the case at all. And so I think that making sure we're staying true to the foundational education is extremely important, but at the same time, looking for ways of how to maybe work smarter instead of harder.
Yeah,
And I think we tend to, you know, strive on the, or rely on the old school of, well, we gotta crank out all this work, and that's really not necessary.
one of the things that, and maybe this is part of what you're saying between your other school and your current school, when this first started, not every school was one-to-one. There's a lot of schools that are still trying to figure it out, still wondering, is this the best direction to go?
Right.
And they learned real quickly, they kind of missed the boat there and they were trying to catch up real quick. That was a lot of what we were doing, is helping people catch up.
Right.
Putting in new policies, getting equipment distributed, all the IT work that needs to be done, but not just that, really modifying the whole teaching model and getting teachers comfortable, the 3 C's: confidence, competence, and content. And that was a huge transition for a lot of schools. So are you saying that your other school was more prepared in the one-to-one model versus your new school?
Well, very much so.
Yeah.
You know, the new is embracing the changes, so.
Yeah.
As we're transitioning, we started a 4C+1, one being Christ-centered, with the 4 Cs.
Mhm.
And so that program will bring much stronger technology in, but at the same time, again, that old school model of keeping the old school wisdom in place.
We always, when we ever do a staff assessment, there's always 20-80-20. 20% of the teachers doing great stuff, 80% needing resources, and 20% leave me alone, I'm really not interested. They all had to get up to speed quickly, and it was a huge transition. So administrators had a lot of headaches, so did teachers, so did parents, obviously the students. It was something that was just changing. It changed our industry forever. Do you guys have any input from the IT world, from what you guys saw, or from our speaker panel?
Yeah, so I was thinking, I kind of endured the pandemic, not as an educator, but as a parent who worked with educators and was a former educator, kind of seeing all these things converge. My children were in kindergarten and first grade when we pivoted to remote learning.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the first time they'd ever used a computer.
Oh boy.
Their school was not one-to-one.
Yeah.
So as a parent,
Right.
I know how to use technology for myself, but trying to help my kids know how to use the technology they were given.
Right.
And also, the apps, the websites, the things that are out there, I really had to trust the teacher as the person who was vetting the resources.
Yeah.
And yet at the back of my mind, I'm like, this is changing so quickly. Have they really vetted all of these resources? Have they really vetted all of these apps and these tools that they're asking my children who've never been online before to use? And I think, so that I was actually thinking that the professional development section, parents should really rely on teachers, maybe more so than they should, to be the experts as far as what's safe and what's not. It's not even quality at some point, it's safety. Are you okay sending my child to that website? Are you okay with the pop-up ads that come along with this resource? How do I control that as a parent? I have to trust my kids' teachers. Is that well-placed trust? And that was, we're still working through that.
Yeah, that was a big part of it. And it wasn't universal. Some teachers obviously were more prepared than others.
Yeah.
Some of them, it failed miserably. Jimmy, what was your perspective?
Yeah, I think just the awakening that our shift in focus had to happen quickly to keep up with things, and we as like IT company, we had to make sure that we treated the network like network connectivity both locally and then out to the internet. Most importantly, it became the most important part of the whole technology stack. That we needed to have the expertise and the ability to make sure that we supported people's networks as quickly as we possibly could. And then take that multiplied outsource, provide support for people at their homes. That became the greatest point of like the single greatest point of weakness for any school. It wasn't necessarily like the devices that were the most difficult troubling thing, but making sure that from Wi-Fi all the way out to having really fast broadband, and then if possible some redundancy and disaster emergency recovery. Without internet connection, when everything went distance, it was it definitely separated the schools and put them into tiers between those who were ready and those who struggled and hit bottlenecks in that. major
Yeah,
problems.
that was probably one of the biggest surprises for me is how many families didn't have internet access.
Yeah.
I was working with a school in Texas and they set up a Wi-Fi network in their parking lot and the kids came to school in their cars. And
Yeah.
that's how they attended class because they didn't have any other option.
We're setting up spots like that, I mean, mobile hotspots.
Getting creative.
Yeah, getting creative with it.
Any input?
I mean, yeah, I think we all have our stories about how this went down. I was in a position where over the past couple of years, I've been in 3 different modes as an educator. I was a principal at a private school when it happened, and so we had to change our complete educational program, right? And of course, bringing up the concerns about what that would look like for parents and how do you change that in-person instruction to be quality online instruction in a community.
Yeah.
Which is funny, right? And then to be a homeschool parent the full year last year to watch and navigate how this goes down and support my kid at home, and then also be a homeschool to another kiddo and watch it. And now being in as a principal in another location and navigating not necessarily the technology, but the government bureaucracy on how we enforce things. I would have to say out of all the things that are there, the reliance on the partnership of parents is paramount. And it's so challenging to be organized in this kind of environment when you have to change things and then you're relying on parents, at least early on, to carry that load and what that looked like. So it was hard. It was very, very challenging. And in certain schools and other districts, they try to do the very best they can. But we're relying on families. If you're coming from a somewhat affluent, middle class or upper class position, you have good skills and resources to be able to navigate it better than those in Title I schools who were basically left to flounder.
Yep. And that was another interesting thing is the home environment. If you have a 2-parent working environment, now you have 2 or 3 or 4 kids trying to learn. That's like an impossible situation if people had it figured out. That was a tough one also. Any input?
Sure, yeah, I'm with Grace Lutheran School up in Lancaster. So we're kind of the resident stepchild of the Pacific Southwest District. We're way out of it. That's why I was late too, like, coming down, oh my gosh, coming through that forest highway where people drive like maniacs and accidents all around. I was like, hope I get to see Rachel today, because but anyway, our main focus was surviving. It was because we were only 60 kids.
Take out your mask. I think so. This will pick up your voice a little better.
Sure, we had 60 kids, but what I was blessed with was an amazing, talented group of teachers. I had 3 teachers that were 2 of them had their masters in online learning, and so they kind of spearheaded everything. And through that, we only lost 3 kids. That was 2 families that moved to Texas, and that was not anything to do with us. But another school that was about 10 minutes away, Christian School Baptist, I believe, they ended up closing. They had 200 some kids, and they lost over 100 kids. The parents said, "We're not paying. We're not going to pay for full tuition for us having to teach at home." And that was our dilemma, was making sure that all the teachers were brought up to speed. We had a teacher who's almost 70 years old, and she's having to work with kindergartners, which she understood, but with the computers, we were 1-to-1, thank goodness. That was a learning curve for her. And so our teachers really did buy in, but it was so hard. It was such a nobody talks about how hard it was on the teachers. We talk about how hard it was on the kids, and it was. We had A students all of a sudden becoming C students, and but our teachers were exhausted. They were working, Saturdays and Sundays, 8 to 10 hours a day, besides everything they were doing till 9 or 10 at night. But it kept us afloat. But it was the technology that they understood. They did what you were saying. They were making sure. We don't like the pop-ups here. We can't use this app. We got, and so we were very selective about what we used, and it kept the parents on board. And all of a sudden, we more than doubled its size because all these families came over from the other school.
Fantastic.
And I made a choice as the administrator to not do virtual learning. I said, they will either be on campus or they can go somewhere else because the virtual learning was it was so bad for the kids. We did it wonderfully, but it was still, you know, we've got kids, when one of you said something about first and second graders or kindergarten. We have kids in first grade that have never been in a classroom until now. And I don't know if you realize how, you probably do. It's brutal. It's so hard for the teacher where you've got half the kids that are up to speed, the other half are sitting there, you know, they can't begin to read.
Yeah.
So it's.
Yeah, there's
a big learning curve.
a lot of rebels out there, kept their doors open, and I think some of those schools benefited from that because those students did get access to quality learning. My son was in first grade at the time, and it was terrible watching him struggle to enjoy online learning. It was a disaster. I heard a statistic this morning. Some politician was talking about his kindergartner's been in a mask a third of his classroom life. I'm like, yeah, I did the numbers. Pretty much, that's what the kids know. Aaron, let's hear your perspective as an IT guy going through that. What did you have to do?
Well, from our
And we had, you can ask us, I think this is very bad.
from our office standpoint, we had to suddenly shift to a full work at home environment. So our entire team overnight went from being here in person to, okay, now we're all working from home.
Yeah.
So that was, I had to facilitate that whole move of make sure everyone had laptops that they could work from home on, make sure everyone had the right bandwidth at home to get online and do meetings via Zoom.
Right.
We had to create a bunch of new accounts for Zoom. So because we were so used to in-person meetings, that's how we always met. And then suddenly we were.
You had to bring your Zoom account, right? Your
Yeah.
Zoom member subscription.
Yeah, that was one thing I heard from a lot of our schools too, as it first happened, was what do we use, was a lot of the questions.
Yeah.
So Microsoft Teams was a big one that we recommended, and Zoom. Then it was, well, how do we get those for free as a nonprofit? So it was walking schools through that process. It's one of the things I handled at the beginning of this. And from a parent standpoint, also working from home with, I have a daughter who was in preschool at the time, who suddenly was now doing preschool from our kitchen table, along with me working full-time and my wife working full-time.
Yeah.
All at the same table. And it was pretty hectic at the time.
Yeah.
But it was encouraging to see how our schools in our district really stepped up to the plate and dove right in and really did it well. I was impressed to see how well they did it, and now the other end of it, seeing how well they are still thriving throughout our district.
So it's interesting when you guys all went to working from home, a lot of companies, today's the day, February 1st, when everyone's coming back to the office. And I've been watching the news all weekend. It's a big deal. Today is a transitional day where we'll see if we got this thing figured out or not. You know, hopefully it's all taken care of, but yeah, it's a lot of people work from home, and now we're going back to the office today, February 1st, which is very interesting. How about Kim, from your perspective, what happened?
I echo a lot of what Aaron said. I know for Rachel, it was a lot of phone calls and direct meetings, and then keeping up to date with everything that was going on and updating website with resources or emailing things out. And yeah, it was something we never expected.
I remember your big November event, you had to move on online version.
Right, we had to do that and learn how to do a large mass conference online, and that was to be our all workers conference. So it was not only educators, but it was pastors, DCEs, directors of parish ministry, deaconess, all workers within our two districts in the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod. We're planning an in-person conference.
How many thousands of people was that?
Well, we're planning on about 12 to 1,500 people, and then have to learn how to do a conference online. So, you know, the blessing is this didn't surprise the Lord, right?
Right.
He was already in it ahead of us in this, and I think the ones that kept their eyes on him and let him order their footsteps were the ones that kind of made it through, the ones that kind of, yeah, what are we gonna do? And lost sight of that a little bit. I think they struggled a little more. And the blessings that have come out of the pandemic have been tremendous. We hear from our schools all the time. We had a school just a couple weeks baptized 2 children because the parents came from the public school to
very nice.
the Lutheran school, and they got to hear about Jesus for the first time, and now they're baptized members of the kingdom. You know, so those kinds of stories we're hearing all the time. So much blessing came out of it. But that pivotal moment and that learning to do things, I think stretch and challenges and stretch the tent, the tent poles out a lot further. I think we're better because of it.
I don't know the official numbers, but I know a lot of the Lutheran schools that we work with have grown significantly from this.
Yeah, I would say that's probably true for upwards of 80% of our schools.
Yeah. It's unfortunate that some of the schools closed in the interim, but some of those that acted not out of fear, but had a positive, perspective did thrive. Any positive input?
Yeah, so I'm from Red Hill Lutheran School in Tustin, so we were in a pretty good place when March of 2020 happened. We were saying about the apps, the teachers are already like using certain apps and certain programs with students. So when we did have to go full remote, it honestly was pretty seamless for where we were at. The next year we opened up full time, but we had students who are hybrid. I'm also, besides administrator, I teach middle school language arts.
Oh.
So I can speak for the teachers. We had to really redesign our curriculum to be digital, to have everything. We used Google Classroom. So that year we had kids, in 2 places, one here, one there. And it's still, I'm still redesigning my curriculum because I have kids who go on quarantine and they're at home, so I need them to be able to keep up in class. So the burden on the teachers is still there, but I think it just made me more focused as a teacher too. Like everything is in one place. So it's like all this work we're doing now it's going to be helpful for the future.
Absolutely. It's really forced us to do things that we wouldn't have done otherwise, to figure things out. Laurelyn, I'm going to let you, I know you have probably a lot of topics to talk about on this subject. I'll transition you up here in a second. I did want to quickly thank our sponsors, Formation Tech, Curriculum Track, and Canva, who helped us, put this together, and we'll offer some giveaways after the fact. But I'm going to bring up Laurelyn Vasquez, who, Laurelyn, also talk about your background and what you've been doing and some of the credentials that you possess.
You got it.
All right, enjoy.
Got it. Thank you guys for coming today. I'm really excited. I'm Laurelyn Vasquez, and I have been in education for about 30 years. And have had ups and downs, as any of us would. But I started off 30 years ago, my first experience with ed tech. I've been in many different realms of education over the years, but at this one particular time, 30 plus years ago, I walked into my school's bookstore. And as I walked into it, in the middle of the bookstore was a huge display. I'm going to have the slides come on up. And when I saw this display, I was curious, and I'm a curious person by nature, which has actually helped me in the past 2 years. Curiosity has definitely helped. We'll talk about that a little more. But I was a curious person by nature. And so when I walked into the bookstore, I saw a Macintosh Apple computer. There you go. And as I walked in, there was a rep there. And, my parents had computers at home, and not at home, in their office at that time. And I knew about email because it was just starting to come about, but I really didn't know anybody that had a personal computer at home. And so I walk into the bookstore and I see this, and of course there's a rep there. And so my first question was, how on earth is that going to help me be a better student? We came to school at those days with typewriters is what we had. And so as the sales rep, was telling me all about it, I took some time asking a lot of questions, and I knew I needed one, but I had a car, and a car cost about as much as a computer. Which one do I have at the time? Well, what sold me was spell check. Believe it or not, I came from a background where I've been told I was dyslexic. When I was first diagnosed, way back in the day, as a young kid, I was told I would never graduate from high school. And my parents were worried. They sent me to reading specialists. I was tenacious. My parents were tenacious. We were able to work through it. I ended up going to college. But as I'm in college, I'm still struggling with some things. The technology wasn't there at that time. People didn't understand, there was no IEPs, learning issues that people had, processing issues. And so as I'm talking to the sales rep, that word spell check stood out to me. And I'm like, What is that? So long story short, I get a computer, I go home with it, it's Christmas break. I spend the whole Christmas just hidden in this thing. The world of a mouse was unbelievable for those of you that might remember with me. And the idea that not only I could do graphics, but I could also become a better student, my world opened up. I didn't hide behind my computer. I still had to do the work, still had to do the research. I was in the library, but boy, did that technology help me out at that time. This was transformative for me. Technology has continued to help me be a better communicator. It has helped me collaborate with others and now come alongside students and our teachers and you guys to help us realize, like, what's the next for our students, to reimagine education, which is what we've been doing the past 2 years, right? Reimagining what is next. Helping our teachers not only to be able to do their job, but to be better at their job, more proficient at their job. The biggest thing that we're seeing over the past couple of years is how can we help our students become healthy digital citizens and innovators. Yet as educators, we have a problem. Technology is always changing. We talked about this with the apps. How do we know what's safe? We have networking connectivity issues. We have hardware that constantly needs updates, Jimmy was talking about. And then we have expectations with software and knowing what technology skills that we are to teach. What is important that our kids need to know? And it can get overwhelming and daunting when we still just want to teach math and reading and writing and keep the basics, So how do we keep our teachers up to date with technology and make integration seamless in a world where every day there is an update? Literally, like we wake up in the morning and we see this update. It's been mentioned in here in this room that our teachers are exhausted, and I can attest to that. We don't want to throw something more at teachers. I, as a middle school teacher, am tired. There's a lot that's happened in the last couple of years, and we don't want some more stuff just piled on us. But it does start with coming alongside all of our schools, our teachers, our parents, to build a culture of curiosity. We're in an age where Charlie mentioned we're more guides on the sides than sages on the stage, right? That's a term that's been around since I was getting my master's in education. But we know that the guide means we're to engage in this curiosity. We're to take our students down the road of curiosity. As administrators, you're taking your teachers down the road of curiosity. There's a freedom in exploring, and it's fun and it's exciting. That's why we became educators to begin with, because learning was fun. As educators, we continue to be curious, and we're modeling this curiosity with our students. This is the first step, is to model this curiosity and to remember to keep the main thing. We're guiding our students as they're watching us, and then we're gently nudging them towards this curiosity. All along asking the question, how can we help make the world a better place? That's part of us keeping the main thing. What is it? Why? What's the why behind technology? Why are we bringing this into our classrooms? Why are we using these apps? How is this helping our parents and our students and us continue this partnership? We can't do it without our parents. We can't do it without the students, without the teachers. It's us all coming together. So when we wake up in the morning, what questions are we asking? What are we as administrators, as leaders, curious about? What are our teachers, our families, our students curious about? Are we curious about a new technology, about the latest teaching philosophy? Or maybe simply, I'm curious about how did my garden do last night, right? Keeping that curiosity alive. What are we curious about in our own lives, as well as in our professional life? We want to encourage all of our educators to stay curious. I see curiosity as a muscle. The more that we're curious, the more we're building it, and the less fearful we'll become. So when the pandemic hit, I was curious. What does this mean? How long? What's going to happen? And how can we keep the main thing the main thing? How can we keep education the main thing? How can I love my kids when they're on a screen across from me? How can I love my parents when they're all fighting about politics? right? How can I do the next thing that needs to be done? It's that idea of being curious, and that it's okay to be curious. This is about reimagining our education. We use technology to reimagine our learning. How can our students learn on the screen and off the screen? How can we teach being curious to our staff? First, we got to make it safe to ask questions, right? Boy, was there a lot of fear when it first happened. And I gotta tell you, as an educator, when I'm in my own domain, in my own world, I know my classroom, right? I know my classroom, I know my curriculum, everything is safe inside that world. And then you throw in all these other things like a pandemic or like a new technology, that's gonna wear me down, that's exhausting. And then you throw in the parent emails with it. But if I could just stay focused on, okay, what am I curious about today? What am I curious about? What is going to be the main thing? Which takes me right back to next. It's the golden rule. When we focus on the main thing that is the main thing, right? How to treat others how we want to be treated. What does this have to do with technology? For years, we've taught our students to be kind in the classroom. You guys remember the poem of What I Learned in Kindergarten? You know, that still is very applicable to us today. It still holds true. Even though Meta, am I saying that right, has been introduced, right? And we've got crypto and NFTs and all this new world that our students are going to be a part of. If we're continuing to teach our teachers how to be curious, and then to just continually be modeling and living into the golden rule. Treat others how you want to be treated. At the same time, we have students who have massive technology in their hands. When we are having that on our mouthpiece at all times, how are you treating your neighbor? How are you loving one another? How are you being kind to one another? Instead of just focusing on devices and the actual technology, we're keeping our teachers up to speed by just reminding them to breathe, to live into the golden rule, and to continue to be curious. We know that the best of humanity is when we pull together to care and love for one another. We teach students because we love and care for them. We feel called not only to help them learn to read, write, math, history, and science, but to treat others as you like to be treated. Studies are showing us that our children are engaged online and in social media too young and for too long. Having our teachers teach the golden rule through technology integration is going to help our students know more how to navigate the world of social media. Having our teachers teach the golden rule in online spaces is going to teach your teachers, is going to help keep your teachers up to date with technology. They'll naturally weave it into their curriculum when we as administrators and a community are coming together saying, this is how we do it. I don't know if you guys know of a app out there, and yes, there's a lot of apps, but there's one called Slack. And Slack was first started with a lot of businesses, and that's when I first heard about it in my husband's business. And then we actually developed a family Slack channel. But it's now being used in universities and schools. And what's beautiful about this is you can literally have, they're called channels, a channel on what are you curious about today? You can have a channel for teacher meetings. You can have a channel for what was the wow of today. And so you've got your staff that's now all integrating and working together and how do we treat one another? Because often emails can be short and snippy. Often we just got a problem child in our classroom and I need somebody to handle it. Or often there was a moment that maybe you had a question and it's just a quick question. The Slack channel is an opportunity to build community within your organization. And it's a way for us to continually be practicing living into that golden rule of being caring for one another, caring for our staff, all along they're using technology. And it's actually fantastic. We have been using it at Rancho Christian across the hill over there in Temecula. And it's really been transformative for the staff and the culture and the community. So this leads me right into digital citizenship. So digital citizenship, this has been a term that's been thrown around a lot, and I'm going to unpack exactly what that means. But part of our role in education today is teaching our students how to be good, wise, healthy, honest, lovely digital citizens. I continue to get asked all the time, what are all the facets of digital citizenship and digital literacy, and why is this important? You know, I'm watching you guys as administrators navigate this world of social media. You're seeing what happens, cyberbullying happens online, and then it comes into the classroom. And then you have parents calling you saying, wait a minute, this kid's bullying my kid online. And you're like, but it didn't happen in the classroom. What is it that we're to do? It's not happening on our school property. How do we navigate that? We need to be teaching digital citizenship at a young age, just like in kindergarten, when you learn to stand in line and you learn to say please and thank you. Those same ideas need to be taught in kindergarten in the online spaces. There's a speaker, and I believe he's the president of ISTE, Richard Collada. He's from ISTE, and he has this powerful idea. Digital citizenship is not a list of don'ts, but a list of do's. Digital citizen is not just about online safety. It's not about making sure students don't post inappropriate pictures or have their passwords protected. That's important, and we need to teach that. Keeping students safe is very important. But digital citizenship is a person who develops the skills and knowledge to effectively use the internet and other digital technology, especially in order to participate responsibly in social and civic activities. That's online and offline. To be responsible in their social and civic activities online. Every one of us are leaving a digital footprint. We can't deny it, we can't run from it anymore. You know, at the beginning when we were first doing one-to-ones, parents were like, I do not want my child to be online. Children are going to be online. There is going to be online education. They're going to need to be equipped, right, for their jobs. They're going to be online. So instead of running from it, we're going to teach them how to be responsible in it. I call this turning the yuck into yum, especially when I'm with elementary school educators, right? Their world is yucky out there. The kids see this yucky stuff out there, but we have the opportunity to educate and come alongside and make it really yummy, make it beautiful, be the light of the world in some really dark spaces. Some of you may have heard of a show called Ted Lasso, right? He puts a sign above his door before you go into the office that says believe. And I had thought about the scene that I actually first saw that so often with this sign. He wanted his team to believe that they could do it, believe that they could become something that the world was saying they could not, to believe in themselves, right? They were at the bottom, they weren't winning any games, and it's like just this visual, like believe. We as educators do desire for our students not only to believe in themselves, but to believe that our online world can become a better place. It can become a better place, that all of us together can make it a better place. We as educators have the ability to guide this next generation to being responsible, kind-hearted, and caring. We have the ability not only to live out the change we desire to see, but to be that change, to be the guide on the side, leading them into curiosity in healthy, appropriate online spaces, leading them to be that light in the golden rule. We want to teach the students in a positive frame, have students ask questions. How can I leave a healthy digital footprint in the world? We do this by collaborating with other teachers and professionals in this ed tech space. We have to collaborate. As a teacher, I've been so used to my own little world, but the world is so big out there, and we want to equip our students and our children to be in this world. So we've got to be collaborating. Things like today, we've got to be doing with each other, with our teachers. Do you know that teachers in your school can become Google certified, Canva graphic creation experts, coding and data science instructors, even if they have no background in it, and more by collaborating with the experts and trainers in those fields? There's so much out there that we can be helping our teachers to grow into with confidence. Why teach coding starting in curriculum or without screens? You can teach coding in pre-K. Because the coding language is going to be the language for this next generation. It is being used more than the Spanish and German and French and English. We need multiple languages in our pockets, not just the language of our primary country. And coding is significant. In fact, I was talking with a woman, she is a VP in one of the tech companies, and she was telling me that her assistants have to know certain coding languages. So the ability for our kids to be fully functioning the way they need, if assistants need to have some understanding of coding, then we need to be teaching that to our students. And it's not necessarily like, here's a computer science class, the AP class that you take, although that's important, right? But it's teaching that computational thinking as early as preschool, which is algorithmic, left, right, forward, backwards. Problem solving is a lot of what this is. So we teach this because it's important that computational thinking practiced early helps students succeed. Digital citizenship is about curating a positive and effective digital footprint. We can support our teachers by giving them the tools to teach their students how to curate a positive and effective digital footprint. There's curriculums out there, there's PD out there for teachers to have fun learning. Teachers being curious alongside students being curious. Make your PD powerful by giving your teachers and staff the opportunity. We no longer need to be in a crisis management mode. We're coming out of it. Instead of the pandemic, right, we call it an epidemic. We don't have to have that fear of, oh my gosh, what's next? Because we're keeping the main thing. We know who's in charge. We know that it's about the golden rule. We know that it's about curiosity. And so let's make our PD effective so that our teachers are continually being confident and growing. Finally, we keep teachers up to speed with the ever-changing technology by us modeling it. The best part of humanity is when we come together to encourage, to care, to create, and help one another. Let's create solutions for the problems of the world. That's what we're doing with our students, right? We're teaching them to think, to create the solutions. I was in a robotics lab the other day, and the instructor there, she said, okay, students, we have a student in our class who doesn't have an arm. How are they going to reach that shelf up there? We're going to create something right now. You know, the idea of solving problems, real world problems that our kids have, that's what we get the joy and the privilege of doing. Creating solutions for problems of the world. We learn to use technology to make our world, our country, our state, our city, and our home more meaningful and better. We learn to use technology to gain respectfully online with people who are different from us. And boy, have we seen different thoughts, different ideas. Gosh, if we're the light of the world, the light of the world is in us, then let's be the light of the world in all these digital spaces as adults modeling this. Let's equip our teachers and teach our students how to curate this digital footprint through modeling, PD, growing our curiosity, learning how to be healthy digital citizens who live out the golden rule. We can do this. We've seen it being done, and now we can take it to the next step and bringing us all together to say, okay, let's go. My first step would be to just start with saying, okay, teachers, let's listen to you. What is it that you need? Knowing what we've learned in the past few years on how to create healthy digital citizens. Yeah, any questions that you guys have on that? I've been doing teaching digital citizenship for a long time, and I have actually realized with many teachers, one of the issues that I've seen is teachers want to have a teacher world and a private world, which is important for us all to have. But how do we merge that digital muscle, right? That healthy digital citizenship muscle with kids in the classroom, and realizing that we're all on a team in this together. How do we teach our kids to be nice online? Also, without having them be online, which is another skill where PD comes in. There are lots of ways we can teach kids how to be nice online without them being online. So, any questions?
Wonderful presentation, Laura Lynn. I want to give a little bit of credit to somebody. A lot of people are not aware that Laura Lynn's father, Rick Harrell, is actually my co-founder and business partner here at Beyond Technology. And Rick, I'm sure this is a proud moment for you. Laura Lynn and I are on the same stage presenting. Laura Lynn's our curriculum director. All these things she's talking about, she's working into what we do as curriculum developers and professional developers. And something that we also like to make people aware of is actually a good place to do that, is that we are all in with Canva. Canva is one of our strategic partners. Canva is on the brink of becoming a major player in educational creativity software. I like to say, you know, they're like where Google was 10 years ago. Canva's right there, getting ready to create lots of tools free for educators. So we're real excited about that. And so a lot of the things that we're doing is providing resources to help educators learn how Canva can be successfully implemented in their classroom. We're not doing how-tos, it's more project-based learning opportunities. And then a lot of our professional development is going to be around how to use Canva in the classroom. So that's a big one. And also, which is a perfect segue, our curriculum is also embedded in the Curriculum Track software. Curriculum Track is a wonderful tool for curriculum mapping. Michael Arnold is here from Ohio. Come on up, Michael, and let's hear what you have to tell us about Curriculum Track.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. I've been looking forward to this trip because it's nice to get out of Ohio every once in a while. So Sunday night, after I watched my Bengals get into the Super Bowl, I started heading over to the hotel near the airport, only to find out that my flight was delayed the next morning, and then I changed it, and then that one got delayed. And so after 2 flight delays, 2 changed flights, 3 airplanes, and 2 layovers, I finally made it in last night so that I could share with you guys, and I'm happy to be here. A little bit more about me. I used to be a teacher. That's who I am in my heart. You know, my spirit animal is a teacher, I should say, maybe. I taught in middle school and high school classrooms for about 15 years, and then got into curriculum directing for an online school. Found out that I'm a big curriculum nerd, and I wear that badge proudly, and then got into Curriculum Track. And usually, so Curriculum Track, we work with about 1,000 schools around the world. We have schools in every state within the United States and 36 other countries. And so when I have the opportunity to visit a school, they find out that I'm from Curriculum Track, there's one of 2 responses. There's never an in-between. It's usually, oh, Curriculum Track, we love Curriculum Track, which is great. We hear that every once in a while. But most often it's, oh, Curriculum Track, right? Because Curriculum Track is all about mapping your curriculum, and it's a major initiative for a lot of schools. A major, it's a software piece, but it's a big job. And so it fits into this conversation that we're having about technology, because it's a technology tool. But what we find is that it's often a big disruptor in a school, any school who adopts Curriculum Track. And so we got to thinking recently about how do we get some of those, oh, you're from Curriculum Track, how do we move those over to, oh, we love Curriculum Track, this is helpful. And so we created our own certification program to train teachers how to use Curriculum Track, but also to get the benefit out of that. And I'm not here to sell Curriculum Track today, although if you don't use Curriculum Track, we'd be glad to let you, just talk to me about that. But I wanted to share with you some insights that we've gleaned as we've worked with educators to help bring them to the table whenever there's a disruption. And that could be adopting a textbook, that's a disruption, right? Technology tool, introducing a new technology tool, a pandemic, that's a big disruption. We should try that again in a few years. So how do you bring them to the table? And ultimately, how do you help teachers find freedom and flexibility to be who they want to be in the classroom? As they're trying to jump through hoops, trying to do more with less, isn't that well, that's actually the perpetual teacher problem. We showed a little bit about that, but They are not there to keep jumping through hoops and keep doing more and doing more and doing more. They want to build relationships with their students. They want to influence their students. They signed on to your school probably first and foremost for the pay, and then right after that for the school mission, right? And so educators are mission-minded people. And so how do we help them gain freedom and flexibility? I have 4 basic questions. Basic, not because I'm going to talk down to anybody, but these are questions you've thought of. But we found that it's easy for teachers as they explore these questions, think through these questions, to kind of go with the pat answers, the easy answers, and not dig a little bit deeper and move past those easy answers to the more meaningful ones. And that's where you find freedom and flexibility as you try to streamline your curriculum decisions. And that's what Curriculum Track is about. But building freedom and flexibility comes back to these 4 basic questions. But where does that teacher squeeze come from? Let's talk about that for just a second. Teachers are always asked to do less with more, or more with less. Do more with less, that's the right way. And I have a couple of word clouds up there. Any disruption in education, it's usually an increase in one side and a decrease on the other, and teachers are just kind of feeling squeezed on both sides. You could probably add your own terms to the word cloud. I'm just going to give you a few anecdotal things that I've observed even in my own career. My first full-time teaching job was in 2001, which is a lot further back than I'd like to acknowledge sometimes. But even then, we're in the early 2000s, we didn't have email at the school that I was at. We didn't have the internet in the classroom. One of the computers in the teacher's lounge, I think, had internet access. It was dial-up, and we could go there if we had some reason to use the internet, which wasn't very common. I had dial-up at home, and I checked my email at home, but I didn't have a teacher email. And think about how that has changed education. This is an increase in technology in the classroom, access to the internet, just since the early 2000s. Now my kids, 2nd and 3rd grade, they're encouraged to email their teachers if they have any questions. So there's an increase in email from none to a lot. Teachers are online all the time looking for resources and ideas and plans and thoughts and worksheets. That wasn't something we did back in the early 2000s. We basically had to go to conferences once or twice a year to get ideas, or talk to other friends, or use our teachers' manuals. So an increase in technology has been a big disruption, but it's not all bad, right? There's a lot of good that has come from that. At the same time, there have been decreases in what we have access to. And the big one there for me is time, face-to-face time, prep time, seat time, instructional time. Did I already say prep time? Do teachers have prep time these days? So every time there's an increase or a decrease, anytime there's a disruption, teachers feel a little bit squeezed, and they're just asking, how do I get my sanity back? How do I get back? How do I get my life back? And so again, as we think about how do we introduce here a curriculum track, how do we introduce a major initiative into a school? This would translate into a lot of other areas. 4 basic questions, I want to share those with you. First question is, what are we trying to accomplish? Notice this is a question that we ask in the we. It's a collective question. It's not an individual question. What are we trying to accomplish? This is what I call the existential question. Why am I here? What is my purpose? Why did I get into this? Mama said there'd be days like this, right? We're staring into our coffee, trying to find some motivation. What am I trying to accomplish today? But as a school, it's easy to answer this in a competitive way, right? We're trying to be better than the school down the road. We're trying to compete with the school down the road. We're trying to provide all the same programs and opportunities and electives as the school down the road. But as independent schools, faith-based schools, we should be mission-minded, right? Mission-focused. We have different purpose. We have different outcomes. And so by stopping every once in a while as we adopt a new initiative, a new textbook, a new process, a new app, a new technology tool, and asking, well, what are we trying to accomplish through this? How does this fit into our mission? It'll drive us to student achievement or student outcomes, because our students are our mission, right? So what do we want to accomplish in the heads and the hearts of our students? How are we going to capture their attention, their imagination, and help drive their ideas? How does this serve our community? That's part of our mission. The parents, the families who are surrendering their treasure, their kids, their finances to support your school and get their kids there, you have a commitment to them. Your mission is your commitment to them. And so what are we trying to accomplish? If we push past the competitive question into the more mission-centric question, that helps us bring focus. And we know this, right? This is how we prioritize anything. This is how we choose between A or B. This is how we cut through the noise and get to the crux of any situation as we're trying to understand what's going on and what we're trying to do. So that's the first question, the existential question. But that leads us, because we're schools, because we're educators, that leads us to the next question that we need to ask. It seems like an obvious question. What do we teach? This isn't what do I teach? What do we teach as a team? And in this question, we need to move past the simple answer. This is the conceptual question. The simple answer is sometimes, well, I teach third grade. I teach Algebra 1. I teach from this textbook. I use this resource. We need to move past those kinds of answers into the student-focused answer, which is the concepts, the knowledge, the skills that we want to take our students to take away from our teaching, the transferable, applicable things that they can, the lifelong learning that they can walk away with. And so this helps us form our school-wide curriculum. As we ask, what do we want to accomplish? What do we teach? It gets to school-wide curriculum because it's not just something that I do alone. When it comes to research, you could follow Dr. Marzano, Dr. Mike Schmoker, several others. They say the research, schools who gather around this question, what do we teach? And gather their school-wide curriculum to protect it, to provide for it, to promote it, that's a first factor in student achievement. So if we want our students to do well, we have to ask the question, what do we teach? Even more important than our budget, our buildings, the technology tools that we use, the socioeconomic demographics that our students come from, the engagement level of our parents, if we can focus on what we teach, then our students can achieve more and can be more successful. And so that's an important question. It's a focused question. It gets us to the conceptual nature of what we're trying to do in our schools. Third question then is, well, how do we teach it? So we have the existential question, what are we trying to accomplish? We have the conceptual question, what do we teach? This is the pedagogical question. How are we going to go about doing this? Because it's easy for teachers to think, well, I teach with worksheets, I teach with projects, we do a diorama, right? The diorama. We need to move past some of that thinking and again, focus on our students and focus on the research, the data that's out there about what works well for students. This is where we get student feedback. This is where our relationships with our students become very important. How do we teach it? We have to teach in a way that captures our students' heads and our students' hearts. The way we taught something back in 1975, before students were born with a cell phone in their hand, is probably not the same way that we should teach it today, right? Our students have changed. And so we need to think about our students as we think about how are we going to teach these things and the changing world that they're living in and the changing world that we're preparing them for. They say that kindergarten teachers are training their students for jobs that have not even been invented yet. How do you even begin to do that? Well, we have to think about how we teach and move beyond that once and done planning. We're going to use the same worksheet that we've always used and be more thoughtful. Now, this doesn't seem like streamlining, but as we ask this question, it gets us again to our priorities, our purpose, our goals, and ultimately the outcomes. It cuts through the noise. Final question, how can we work together to do it better? This is the collaborative question. When I was a teacher, my last teaching assignment was 8th, 9th, and 10th grade Bible, Southeastern Michigan. As you know, there's no set Bible curriculum in most Christian schools. I would have to drive at that point about 2 hours to get to another 8th, 9th, or 10th grade Bible teacher in my region to collaborate with, because I had the mindset that you collaborate over concepts. Well, you do collaborate over concepts, but we also collaborate over our pedagogy, we collaborate over our resources. Hey, I understand that you're introducing Flipgrid in your classroom. Can you tell me pitfalls? What wouldn't you do? What would you do? You're using it in 3rd grade. How would I use it in 2nd grade? Back when we pivoted to remote learning, my daughter's teacher, again, my daughters had never used any technology in their education to that point. Well, some maybe, I guess, and they had their tablets and things. But all of a sudden, they're being introduced to Flipgrid. And my daughter, who was in 1st grade, fell down this hole of watching all of the responses of everybody in her class, and she loved it. And I give the teacher credit because she was trying something. But boy, it was kind of hard for us to pull her back out and say, you still got 2 or 3 hours of online learning yet today. Let's be done with that. So collaborating, the point I'm trying to make is as we collaborate as teachers, we're able to understand what works well, what doesn't work well. And it's not just the conceptual framework of our class, but it's also the pedagogical practices that we use. So this is where we need to move past this idea of independence and isolation. Teachers are no longer independent contractors. They're no longer going into their cave and shutting the door and doing their own thing. Everything they do in their classroom is about preparing their students to be the digital citizen of tomorrow, to be the work for tomorrow, to be the light in the community. And we're all responsible for that. So it's not just me who has that job. We're all working together. We also need to push past this idea. It's a growing concern of mine, this idea that we're all have proprietary rights over what we develop. Everyone wants to develop things with teacher pay teacher or build their brand and post online. That's great as a side gig, I think, but we need to be able to collaborate over those things. So if you've discovered something as a teacher that works well for you, if you've learned something, then I think you're duty bound to share that with a colleague. And that requires humility, that takes time, that takes trust, and it involves a growth mindset, as you see down the screen. So how do we work together? The reason we want to share this, these 4 questions, is as we work with schools, we were not in the trenches in the curriculum track during the pandemic. We weren't in the schools, we support schools. So we kind of saw our role as being on the sidelines, encouraging teachers, rooting for them. And we had the opportunity to talk with a lot of schools. We made opportunities to talk with schools. What are you doing? What's working well? Gratefully, as some of you have already mentioned, most of the schools we work with saw at least a 6 to 8% increase in their enrollment from during the pandemic. And I think it's largely because most of the schools did return to their mission. They said, who are we? Who are we here to serve? And that came through, and parents resonated with that. But there are a lot of schools who floundered and struggled because they didn't return to these 4 questions. What are we trying to accomplish? What are we trying to teach? How are we going to teach it? How do we work together to do this better? And they fell into the trap of just saying, what was I going to do in class today? How do I translate that to an online environment without going all the way back to the drawing board and thinking about how does their teaching change because of the online environment? So as we work with schools, these 4 questions became very important, but I came across a statistic. busyteachers.org a few years ago dropped a number, the number of decisions a teacher makes during their instructional day. Are you familiar with that? How many decisions does a teacher make? Okay, don't give it away. Anybody want to take a guess? How many decisions, while they're on the clock during 6 hours of instruction, about how many decisions, if you had to guess? And I don't know their methodology. I don't know how they did this. They hooked teachers up to electrodes and follow, but they came up with a number, and it's probably not as high as you would think, but it's an astounding number. Do we have a guess? 100 a day?
I was thinking 1,000.
1,000.
It's just the little ones that you don't even think about.
Yeah. And these are decisions like, do I get closer to the student because he's acting out, or do I get further away because he's acting out, right? Oh, Ruby is my daughter. She answers every question, or raises her hand for every question. Am I going to call on Ruby today, or are we going to wait for someone else? More wait time. According to busyteacher.org, and that was picked up by TeachThought and some of the other blogs and educational bloggers and websites, the actual number is 1,500 decisions a day during 6 hours. That's about 3 to 4 decisions a minute during the instructional day. Another blog that I follow said that that's not quite as many decisions as an air traffic controller makes, but more than a brain surgeon would make. And that makes sense. We're not surgically trying to change the way our students think. We're trying to use our power, our influence, our experience to do that, but we're also not trying to send them out in the fight. Teaching is not rocket science, but it is harder than brain surgery. I like to say that. But where do those decisions come from? Those decisions we make during our instructional day come from the decisions that we make, the questions that we've asked prior to our instruction. What are we trying to accomplish? What do we teach? How do we teach it? And how can we work together to do it better? Those drive all of the decisions that we make. So these questions ultimately are about capturing those decisions, and curriculum track, curriculum mapping is about capturing those decisions so you can refine them, reflect on them, reuse them to the extent that you can, and become better. So if you have any questions about curriculum track, curriculumtrack.com. If you are a curriculum track user viewing this remotely, feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions about how to apply these questions to your practice. Support at curriculumtrack.com, and I'd be glad to share my thoughts, my notes, my slides with you as well. I'm Arnold at DISsolutions.com. Thank you for your time. Any questions, comments?
Yeah, I made that comment, clarify what I said earlier. Not just the fact that the Holy Spirit blessed us with one new teacher from Texas who had worked with me before in Oxnard and decided she wanted to come back. And she came back that August with 2 weeks notice. And I mean, it was just crazy the way it happened with her principal saying, we've got somebody who's called and went out on maternity leave. She'll take your place. Go ahead and go. And she wanted to be back here. And so she took over, and when everything hit March 13th, that was our break started, that 2-week break for spring break. And it was like that whole break we just spent together, you know, planning, strategizing, and she pulled along all the lower grade teachers where the biggest gap was. And what you said about collaborating, that's how we survived. Was our teachers had no ego. They were all about spending the time with the weaker links, so to speak, in the tech world, and it made us excel. And it was painful, but it was so valuable, and it did redefine who we were.
Yeah.
And we still use, as you were saying. So I think Kim was saying the blessings from COVID were there. I mean, it improved who we were as a learning institution.
Yeah, that's great. A quote that I love about collaboration, I saw this from someone on Twitter that I follow, and I can't remember who it was, but it stuck with me. Everyone you meet knows something that you don't know. I mean, that's kind of obvious, but when you think about it that way, it's, well, that's why we collaborate, right? Because especially during disruptive times, whether it's as bad as a pandemic or we're just trying to introduce a new SMS or LMS or whatever, there's other people who might know something that I don't know. So I need to swallow my pride, you know, get over develop some humility and say, hey, I need help here. But also the other side of that is when you discover something, hey guys, I'm good at this. This is coming easy to me. If you need help, let me know. That's not prideful either. You know, that's I think a mark of humility. So anyway, well, thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Wonderful presentation. You know, they're interviewing for your next conference to be speakers, all of our speakers today, right? So they want to be on the agenda. Charlie's coming up next. I want to make a comment real quick on what Michael just said, because it's really fascinating. You know, I've been working with Laura Lynn's father Ricky over 30 years now in education. And one thing I found, especially when it came to technology, people always felt, well, the younger teachers know more. They're going to thrive better with the technology. Yeah, for the most part, they were easier to pick up skills. But the veteran teachers have that experience that new teachers don't have. And so to blend the two, and when you do that collaboration, making sure that everyone is represented from a veteran to the techie young upstart, what do they call them, the rock star technology users.
We had the 70-year-old teacher that figured out how to get online. I mean, that's a phenomenal story.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Because so often they're stereotyped, right? But truly, I have found the 20-year-old teacher can be just as spiritual as a, you know, it's not an age thing. It's me.
It's the unknown.
It's the unknown. So where that curiosity, like she was willing to be curious to learn to take a step, which I thought that was beautiful.
When I first started in this world, we had computer schools, and we used to teach a DOS class. Remember MS-DOS in the PC world? The fun stuff, right? Command line. And I had a teacher come in, and she sat down, and she got the mouse, and she put it on the floor, And she thought it was a pedal, like sewing machine. Not making this up. And I thought we picked up a lot of ground. She started using it now, she understood. But the last day, she said, I really like this do's class. When's the don'ts class? I obviously didn't get my point across at all. But anyway, we're going to transition. Charlie has his next presentation. If you have the slides come up. Anyone that's online, and there's a handful of you, please, you'd ask questions. We'd be happy to include you. Charlie.
It's great hearing from the other presenters. We're all trying to figure this out together. And so one of the things I wanted to touch on is when we have all these resources, how do we manage them, and how do we incorporate our mission into using the technology? If you are able to put up a slide, that'd be great. It's the same presentation from before. Thank you. Oops. There. All right, so we talked a lot about fulfilling our educational mission, and we're in this new school reality. And when we take these tools, I think I kind of just wanted to create a little framework around how we can create a positive culture using the technology. And this is for the adults and for the children, right? This is for the teachers and the students. When we're looking at getting on the internet and figuring out our curriculum and trying to figure out what we need to learn and how we need to get there, we need to explore, and as Laura Lynn mentioned, we need to be curious, and we also need to communicate in a way that's empathetic towards others. So it's kind of like, now we have a digital sandbox, if you will. The children are playing in the sandbox. You've got to give them some room to explore and try things. And sometimes it gets a little messy, or it could be get a little dirty. But as we're also going through that with them as the adults, we can guide them along the way. So, you know, that they're not going to get hurt, but they're going to have more meaning from that educational experience if they're the ones taking a little bit more ownership. I think we found with all these new digital resources, we're giving the students more ability to become independent creators, independent thinkers, independent learners. And with that, it can be a little messy, but it just can be much more of a valuable educational experience. So if we can create a culture around that, a school culture and a digital culture that embraces the curiosity, but also reinforces empathy in how we communicate with each other, that just makes much more of a powerful experience for students. Along with that, social emotional learning has become so important, and I think over the last couple years, we really felt as adults and children, the level of anxiety seemed to have really increased. And a lot of that is, there's a lot of unknown. So I think within that, incorporating, if we're going to allow students to go online, and sometimes they're going to make mistakes, either with how they communicate or with what information they're going to go to, and maybe don't go there. We need to incorporate some of those valuable lessons. We need to give them grit to keep going, even when things aren't working out for them, or if they're going to get frustrated. I often see with students, when they're on their devices, in one hand, they know a lot about technology devices that when I was a kid, I wouldn't have known anything about. but they're also want to move through everything so quickly. And so with that can often cause those like crisis moments, and we want to manage those. So we want to give them the tools necessary to be able to navigate that. And within that, we do need to give them the core competencies in digital literacy, like Laura Lynn was mentioning. We're trying to develop digital citizens. They need to know how to use the tools though effectively. But we have second, third, fourth graders that can do slideshow presentations as well as adults. And that's really great, because then we can put them in an opportunity where they can be the ones presenting the material. And those are just such great life skills that can be had in a K-8 environment that maybe weren't even available for us as students. And we had to catch up and learn those skills when we entered the adult world. So even simple things like being able to type 40 and 50 words a minute. My middle schoolers, you know, they go into high school and they're so proficient with even just simple things like keyboarding, and again, knowing how to code, and those things, if you can teach a kindergartner how to code, and they just understand the basic foundations of what that language is, or how to make something happen on a digital platform where they can animate their poetry. I mean, that just makes that whole world come alive. So suddenly now they're not just reading a black and white poem and then trying to make sense of it with their teacher as far as what the meaning is. Maybe they can take that and animate it and bring colors to it and have it come to life. And those are really cool experiences where I find as a teacher, because I'm still teaching the K technology, I learned so much from just watching the students. And I think we need to understand that if we create an environment with that, and then also as teachers understand, there's going to be things that the students can help us so that the learning experience together is much more valuable. So, and I think as teachers learn through the pandemic with distance learning, or trying to work a Zoom, or if you're trying to manage, people on their devices, zooming in, but then also in person. And the poor teacher is trying to figure out how to mute one part and turn on the mic for the other, and where's my camera? And these little 7 and 8 year olds, well, Mr. Hayes, here, I can help you with that. And maybe they're the ones working the controls. It's just much more of a collaborative and healthy environment. Along with that though, one piece I think that really is important is, now that we're in this connected world, is to promote balance and reflection. A lot of my schools have brought in mindfulness lessons for teachers and students, just to manage some of the frustration level, or just the amount of communication, the amount of engagement that has been necessary to kind of keep educational model moving forward has been really stressful. It's been really, really stressful. So building in those prayer breaks or those breathing techniques so that we can, go at this environment again has really been helpful to create kind of that environment for teachers and students. So, I mean, after listening to Laura Lynn and Michael, this is just kind of this overlay that I feel like is a good framework that schools should be going towards. Any comments around those elements? Or have you found your experience at your school sites, some of this stuff? Are these things that you're discussing with your teachers? Something we're to concern ourselves with?
I think for us, it's, we've been working hard to create a network. You mentioned Slack earlier, that's been a huge, that's the main piece that we're using, and it works really well. what that does is brings about that collaboration, especially on specific topics. Like I have a channel that's just for those of you that know LEA, all the LEA publications that come out, it just goes into a channel and teachers know that there's a resource there, so it creates those resources. I think that, and it's a safe environment. I think that's one of the big pieces there. We're working through curriculum development with social studies right now, and so developing those collaborative pieces and being able to be safe within that to make those decisions, that's huge. So I think that, yeah, so all these things are fitting right along with what we're trying to do.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Slack, are you watching? You want to sponsor our next event? Yeah, that's a wonderful tool. We've been using that internally, and it's really made a big difference. Thanks for bringing that to us, Laurel. Jimmy's coming up next to talk about IT and some topics related to that. Laura Lynn pointed out something earlier I wanted to address. She showed her Mac computer that introduced her, kind of sucked her into the whole technology world. Laura, I never heard that story from you before. I have a very similar story. I'm going to share it. My dad used to have an engineering company and did some work with Hughes Aircraft, and they were tearing down their computer lab. And this was in the mid 80s. And he asked them, what are you doing with all these computers? And they said, we're tossing them out. My dad said, well, can I get one? And so my dad brought home a TRS-80 Model 2, Trash 80, with a big 8-inch floppy disk drive, had a keyboard and a black and white monitor and a 9-pin dot matrix printer. Now, this was high tech back in the day. This was actually considered a mini computer, not a personal computer. And so we had something called Scriptsit, we had VisiCalc, and we had DBase. We had a word processor, a spreadsheet, and a database program. So as a high school kid, I had access to something that no other kid in my high school had access to. Now, if I was to back up a little bit, I was a very average student. When I was the Chamber of Commerce president doing a civic presentation, I saw my geometry teacher in the room, and I said, and Mrs. Weeks gave me a D in geometry. And she said, I didn't give you a D, you earned a D. And so I never pointed her out again after that. But that's kind of where I was. And then when I got access to this computer, it gave me a whole nother way to communicate, to give feedback to what I was learning. And it just changed my life as a student from D's to B's and A's. Went to college, Cal State Fullerton, and still had that computers through college. But it's funny, what it really allowed me to do is take a report and make it from a one-page report. I learned how to double space, now it's a two-page report. I learned how to change the margins, and now it's a three-page report. Little things like that. But I was the star of the school to my teachers, but it gave me a voice. And a lot of your students, introducing them to technology skills will give them a whole other way to communicate with the world. And some of them, especially with some of the online tools, maybe they don't speak up in class, but now they have a way to communicate through texting, through messaging, through some of the other communication apps. It's a wonderful opportunity for a lot of your students. Anyway, that's a perfect segue into technology, IT work. Jimmy Akudaka with Formation Tech.
I'm very excited to.
Our go-to guy.
Okay. Make sure this is okay. Cool. Well, good morning. Really happy to be here and to get to meet you. Looking forward to spending some time with you the rest of the meeting here. What I'm going to be covering is just talking about how to keep up with fast changing technology, particularly from the IT support side. We've obviously seen a lot of change and things are moving quickly. So we're just going to talk about some of those changes that have been happening and what to look forward to in the future. I want to begin by this idea that really, like the future is now. And if you haven't felt like things are moving fast before, certainly over the last 2 years or so, things have moved at a rather rapid pace. While computer hardware has definitely gotten faster, network connections have gotten or have been dramatically improved. IT operations at schools really stayed in the same place for a long time. Remember when I started my career back in 2004, the typical setup for IT in a school was largely unchanged up until a few years ago. You know, you have, you know, maybe a computer lab or two, some computers in the library or media center. You'd have teachers with like a desktop workstation. And that was really about it. Every classroom set up just about the same, everyone trying to use uniform devices as much as possible. And even though, you know, some of those computers got faster as projection and things got better, things weren't, you know, things largely stayed the same. But things have obviously accelerated and changed so rapidly over the last few years. We have, you know, new device classes, entirely new types of technology that are being used. Like I look around the room and everyone has some sort of phone, tablet, you know, laptop, a traditional laptop, or even a laptop with a touch screen. There's just so many different ways to gain access to information now. And really, you know, we've been forced into this, you know, because of COVID, forced into this adoption of quickly taking technology in new directions and adopting new instructional models. I remember, you know, 3 or 5 years ago, people were doing training such as this, you know, attending conferences, talking to people about hybrid learning, you know, some blended classroom, you know, environment. People were trying to formulate pilots or doing things and, you know, very slowly and gradually just kind of dipping their toe in. And then what happens? We have the pandemic and everyone's just thrown in into the deep end and you had to sink or swim. And, you know, whatever things look like moving forward, no matter what normal is going to look like for you, I think everyone has a multitude of options, and you have the ability now to you know, take the experience that you have, and even in a full-blown you know, in-person model. Once again, there's still going to be lots of things that you've learned that you will integrate. Some things somebody mentioned earlier, you know, providing at least right now, you know, online and hybrid options for people who go on quarantine. But you'll see even the way that we approach kids who are out on vacation for a prolonged amount of time, improving the kind of instruction they can receive over older independent study models. They're just, you know, things are never going to go back. I mean, you see it out in the business world with, you know, remote work, just, you know, continuing, and people disrupting real estate markets because everyone's moving out to the suburbs and working remotely. Well, the same type of impact is going to continue for, you know, for schools, and I don't see that slowing down anytime soon. So I jumped ahead a little bit, obviously. So yeah, moving forward, you know, the new technology that we have, it's going to open up all sorts of models for instruction, and really, you're going to be able to dream up any type of program that you want. And the technology is not going to really be a hindrance to you. It's not going to force you into a box, but really, it's going to take people like BTE and others that can help you craft the type of you know, models that you want. They're not going to be strictly dictated by the tech that we currently have in place. So for example, things like, you know, really fast broadband internet connections have changed the way that we access data. We moved from on-site data to cloud-based storage and data. And as I mentioned, having these wide range of devices are going to provide different ways to interact with some of the same material, interacting with media versus, you know, just typing on a conventional laptop. There's all sorts of avenues and opportunities that are opening up. Now, you all know this, but why am I talking about this as, you know, an IT person from the IT perspective? Well, if you look at technology, particularly technology support, then and now, a lot of the work that IT guys used to do was in break fix and, you know, maintaining really expensive equipment. And that's part of why we were, you know, shoehorned into these pretty standard models. But even those things have dramatically changed. We've gone from overhead projectors and like low res projectors to now, you know, flat panel TVs and even interactive boards. You know, both teacher desktops have changed into you can do much of your job on a tablet or on a phone. You know, playing video has become more dynamic. Computers, you know, the computer or the need to support the traditional teacher desktop or the traditional desktop. You know, that's all changing because, you know, as computers improve, they really have like the device itself and the need to support the device itself has really moved into the background. You know, hardware no longer plays an upfront you know, role in things, and schools that adapt quickly are moving away from making large, expensive purchases, capital purchases of equipment, and then moving more to a model of treating the devices as just, generic consumables. Like the most important thing about a device is that it can connect you to the internet and get you to the files and things that you need. And really that's changing everything. I mean, we've seen the way that Chromebooks have been deployed, recently, and that's a dramatic difference from spending, over $1,000 per device to just a few $100s. And so your whole calculus for how you support those things, at what point do you just discard them and replace them? How quickly you replace them? All those factors change, and they've changed in a relatively quick amount of time. All of this is predicated upon this idea, once again, that your data really has left the building, right? All of your information is moving off-site. If you want to know where it is, it's out there in the ether. It's out there in the cloud, and everything has left. It doesn't require powerful, expensive computers nor servers. I mean, like, servers are going away from individual locations and being moved into the virtual space. All these things are happening, and since you don't have a large amount of time invested into supporting servers and hardware, then IT operations shift their focus from handling equipment to handling information and handling your identity information. So your logins, they want to manage your access to things, to vetting and filtering and providing easy ways to stream things like media. I mean, when's the last time many of us have played a DVD in a classroom, let alone a VHS tape? I mean, things have definitely shifted away where you can just really stream and gain access to whatever you need online. There's been a shift away from installed apps, right? We're no longer installing large applications. I remember, back when I started, the full suite of all the pieces of software that had to be deployed to every computer. I mean, it was such a hassle, quite frankly, and so much time was to making sure those things work and then fixing problems. When now, really, just you need an internet browser or access to an app store to get to whatever device that you need. And really, the big shift has gone away from standardizing on one model. I mean, I remember schools used to do, well, we're a Dell school, we have Dell's our main vendor, or we're an Apple an Apple school, and everyone had to fit inside the same box. So where now schools can be by and large like device agnostic. You can use whatever device that you want, as long as, once again, you have an internet connection, and it'll give you access to what it is that you need. And you're accessing the information not just from any device, but from anywhere. Software purchases, therefore, have moved away from one-time purchases, like big bulk purchases in software. So you figure, I got to buy Office 2000, and it's going to be good for 3 to 5 years before they upgrade. And so we have this big upfront expense once, and then several years down the road, we're going to make a new purchase and upgrade. Where now everyone's migrating to these subscription models, where you build into your budget, paying the annual fees to get the most up-to-date versions of the software. We're not managing the software endpoints, but basically our job is to make sure that users have access to the stuff that they need. So what does that mean from schools? Well, or for schools? Well, the goal, and what we've seen over the last couple of years now, is that you can have access from anywhere, from anything, for everyone, which really opens up the opportunities to what you can choose to provide as options for your school, if you so desire. And again, even for traditional in-person instruction, you're still going to have an increased dependence on that network connectivity, and you're going to need a lot of assistance, at least in terms of administrating all of the access that it's going to provide. Now, this all obviously provides great flexibility for teachers, but it increases the amount of training that's needed, and that's really where the shift for people like me and others has gone. Right, we're shifting our focus to supporting people rather than supporting devices and hardware. So we're going to have to shift away from device repair and configuration, like less grunt work and manual labor, towards supporting and training end users, quite frankly. We need to focus our technical expertise away from people who can repair computers, maybe solve a software problem on a PC, to people who are either highly skilled, high-level network and system and sysadmins, people who are real experts, and then, frankly, hire people who can work well with teachers, like with your faculty, with your staff. I think the last 3 or 4 people that I've hired came in with absolutely no technical expertise, but they were very personable, had some experience in customer service and support and sales, and those are the people that the schools absolutely love. It's much easier for them to pick up a phone and call someone else on staff, someone with more technical experience, to help solve a problem, as long as they can be in the classroom helping the teachers solve something, and frankly be a human and not a robot or a when you think IT person, at least back in the day, picking up the phone to call an IT person came with some trepidation, right? Because there could be a bit of a disconnect in terms of their ability to speak English. Yeah, so the analogy that I use is that for us, we're shifting away from like being auto mechanics, right? People who just fix cars all day, but to road construction and maintenance, making sure people have access to get where they need to go. I've already mentioned that we're reducing our traditional IT support. I mean, if your Chromebook breaks, if the repair is relatively inexpensive, if it's like a keyboard, then that's worth it. But once you get 2, maybe 3 problems on a $300 device, it's going to cost you $200 to fix. It's ultimately not worth it in labor, and you just discard it and replace it with another one. But we're also increasing our end user support and training, and like I mentioned, making sure that we hire really specialized, skilled technical people for the high level things, and then bring in people who can work with your staff and faculty, which is a model that I would recommend to everyone. Because really, at the end of the day, as these changes are happening, it all comes down to supporting the end users, right? Like the end users for you and in your schools and organizations, they can be both your greatest asset, like your greatest strength. They can also be your greatest point of weakness. For the organizations that are going to invest in training, in curriculum development, tech support for their staff and faculty, this can be a great opportunity for you, to succeed as technology moves very quickly. Because no matter what is introduced in the future, if you're agile and if you're competent, then you're going to succeed. Like people are going to succeed. But on the other hand, a poorly trained end user, they also do prevent the greatest risk for your information, particularly as we look at things like security. The biggest point of failure for any network, for any organization, is the end user. All of the major hacks that you hear about are achieved by things like phishing scams or people having compromised individual devices. They are your greatest point of failure. Also, you can waste a whole lot of money in buying technology, in deploying curriculum, but without proper training and without professional development, it will be and certainly a big waste. And then ultimately, at the end of the day, to have an underdeveloped or undertrained and underdeveloped staff, well, it's not going to provide the students with the requisite skills that they need, not just for achievement in the classroom, but for life. So our big message here is that the shift that has to happen is a shift away from just tech to people, and to try to help schools succeed as best as we possibly can. So that is it for me. If you have any questions, you can take them now. I'm also going to participate in the discussion in a little bit. So yeah, any questions or feedback?
Jim, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
The transition to Chromebook,
Mm-hmm.
how has that changed the game for you guys?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's some things, like in some practical ways, it's changed a lot of our operations where we spend much less time repairing things than before, and we don't spend a lot of time troubleshooting individual problems, like software problems on a particular computer. A few quick things to diagnose on a Chromebook, and then you either, like flash it, restore it from scratch, or you discard it because of a hardware problem. Chromebooks are by and large, centrally managed through through Google Workspace. So all of your policies, your app deployments, everything is done through that. And yeah, obviously because the devices are more affordable, you can purchase more of them for the same amount of money that for getting devices into the hands of the students, one-to-one or more. There's some places now that even have they have a plethora of devices for all sorts of purposes. But it's also not just, not just Chromebooks. I think Chromebooks are good because they serve a very specific purpose and they fit certain needs. But it's also opened up the opportunity, because they're once again affordable, for special use cases to use other devices where it makes sense. So like if there's engineering classes that don't have options available through the through the web browser, then we can purchase some really powerful computers for specific uses in specific areas, and that would have been possible if the funding situation hadn't been worked out. So yeah, it's massively changed things, and I think we'll see more competition in the space as well. Not just Chromebooks for those cheap.
Yeah, I have another question. I think maybe it's important for them to understand how you interact with schools.
Yeah.
Would you prefer to be the sole source for IT, or to support an existing IT staff at a school, or blended model? How do you manage that?
Yeah, so what we do is we provide our minimum that we do for people is to provide the high level like network and consulting, and we act as someone's as a school's like level 2, like tier 2 or higher sysadmin. And then depending on what the school needs and how much hands-on time they need for teachers, then we either provide our own desktop techs for people, or we have the school have their own person who can triage, help teachers, and then if there is a bigger problem that needs to get elevated, then they'll call us. So we really do both, and it just depends on the school and their culture. Some schools, have someone that they really like and is well known and has a good rapport with the teachers, and so for those places, we just step in to add, to provide some expert support for those folks. For others who've just gone through other change, or they feel like they need a change, then we provide our own people and provide support on a regular schedule. So either some places as sparse as like once a week, some places 5 days a week. It just depends on what they need.
Do you service this area with your?
Yeah, so we're in, well, now we're in Riverside County, Orange County, San Diego County. Oh, we do have one in LA now, don't we? Yeah, so we're Southern California.
So you're not just school driven, you do IT for different places, right?
We are school focused. We only have two, we're K-12 focused, and then we have one nonprofit client, and then one higher ed, like a seminary in Escondido, that's a client as well. But everything else is all K-12.
Because I found we've had IT services over the years, and they don't know the unique needs of a school necessarily.
Yeah. So I started my career working as a desktop tech in a school district in Temecula, and then I moved up to there, and then in another school district out in Paris. And then when I was at Paris, I ran into some union problems, because frankly I was being asked to do work I was asked to do the work of another coworker who was above me in his pay, and they weren't paying me. So I quit, and I started a business consulting to schools. That district ended up bringing me back as a consultant because they needed the help. And then from there, I was able to work with other charter schools and then branch into private schools. So I started as an individual consultant, and then from there built out a business with a team of support people.
What I've loved about
Just in schools.
Yeah, what I love about formation tech is that they know schools. They know schools in and out and the particular needs of schools, right?
And they're working in a couple of Lutheran schools that I know for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's a total, I mean, it's maybe not a total aside for this crowd. I'm also an ordained Presbyterian minister and.
That's cool.
That's a side hustle.
Computers aren't working, right?
Jesus, good job.
Maybe the last grades.
Yeah.
Excellent.
All right, well, thanks.
Thank you, Judy. Yeah, we're a few minutes out of schedule, so I thought maybe the three of us and our speaking panel could tap into the group and kind of debrief. What are the takeaways? Like when you go back, what percolated up here today that you think you might need some work on? What's the focus? We'll go in this direction and just give me your thoughts. But what's going to be important when you get back to school today?
I don't know about resources, because I feel like this is kind of big picture. So as a teacher, like, how do I do the digital citizenship? How do I get the integrated curriculum? You know, like, what do I do? Go to your website?
Call, yeah.
Yeah, we're going to do a follow-up. Canva has given us access to a whole library of videos to use their tools. No one else has access to it. They're letting us push them out first. Laura Lynn has put together a package of lessons that she's working on to help. So we're going to give you some starters, but what really should happen is have a personal meeting with us so we can sit down and really talk to you about where you're at, where you want to go, and what we could do to help, and bring in the whole team of experts at the right time. But yeah, that would be what I would recommend for you. Yeah, there's a lot of moving parts, and we want to make sure that you get, because we're not a price list company. It's all custom built on what you need, because every school's in a different place. But we kind of have, what were we at, 21 years of experience with beyond technology?
Charlie shared a grid, called our swim grid. We want to swim with the school-wide integration model. And what I love about this is that Ernie will come in, we'll consult with your school, and you'll be like, first we need to start with your network issues. Let's bring them to your you've got a middle school goal here. Let's accomplish this middle school goal with digital literacy because you're experiencing cyberbullying in the classroom. So he'll come meet with you and find your full picture on what it is that you guys need, and then we'll personalize it to you guys. It's like, okay, we've got more collaboration needs to happen, whether it's PD, whether on any of it. Another thing that we have is that I think is really a beauty of ours is integration projects. So we'll actually meet with your teacher. If you identify in our 3rd grade or our 8th grade or whatever grade is really missing an integrative project, how to integrate technology into the classroom. So, we've got 4th grade, we're still doing the missions, right? Projects or whatever that standard is for that grade. How can we collaborate, integrate, bring technology into this curriculum? And then we have a professional come and write that based off of your teacher's needs, etc. So everything is really personalized. So it's not just a one size fits all. It's not just we're coming in and, we're not just a software as a service that everybody does the same thing. We want it to be personalized to meet your needs of your school, your flavor, your personality.
So we love to help you. Kim, if you wouldn't mind helping, especially with our 2 vendors, I know that they like to find time to meet with Rachel at some point to share what they do. I think you see there's some value with what they do. But do you have any feedback from your perspective?
I think it's good stuff. I think, we've got schools from every level where they could be the IT people to, okay, we could hardly figure out remote learning. Now what do we do?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the gamut that we have. And so finding people who can, as you're saying, personalize it. But then if you're speaking on, you talk about maybe being part of our conferences, we don't we don't want our sessions to be sales pitches because we've had challenges with that in the past, but that we want them to be applicable across the board through preschool, through high school, beginning end user to advanced, how can you even take an advanced end user to another level? So those are the kinds of things that Rachel really vets and looks for, is she's looking for people to come in. So at lunch, I'll sneak back, I'll grab and then so you have the opportunity to have that connection. But those would be good questions that would be looked at. It's similar to what you were just saying. We can't be a one-stop shop. We have to look at our schools that have as few as 40 students in them,
Right.
all the way up to our schools that have 2,000 plus students and are well-oiled machines and leading and are leading in all of that. So
Leading institutions.
yeah.
And that is part of the challenge. That's a unique challenge for you as kind of the mothership, the district office for all these schools from all different levels and socioeconomic
Well,
backgrounds.
and then the other piece is our churches and schools are all self-governing. So we can't say this is what you're going to do. We provide best practices, we provide professional development, but ultimately it's up to the school to make the decision as to whether or not they're going to participate in that. And they control their dollars, you know, so we can do all we can, but we can't mandate anything.
Sounds fun. Aaron, any takeaways that you're gonna, now that you've seen the big picture of what we're talking about here, I know you interface with a lot of different educators at different levels.
Yeah, it's like what Kim said, a lot of that, just kind of echoing that, you guys become another tool for me a resource for me to recommend out when a school or church calls. Not church in this case, but when school calls, I can recommend, well, we've got this resource that you can look into and let me connect you. So you guys become another possibility for me to connect people with when they do call in. So that'll be my takeaway, is just knowing who you are and what you guys are now. I have that knowledge, so I can pass it on if it is applicable to that conversation.
Right. And just to correct one thing that you said, so when it comes to Jimmy and IT, he knows churches also. You have to, in this business, you have to know churches and schools. Sometimes you have to break apart and bring together. It's challenging, but yeah, he knows that world as well. His team prepared. Yeah. Lancaster.
Hey, I'm just listening and learning, and I've got our tech person. I'm going to go back and share with she was excited that I was going, and so I'll be sharing, and you'll probably be hearing from us.
Excellent.
But, we are good at what we do, but I'm not saying that we can't do more. We can't do it differently. We can't do it better. So that's what I'm excited about. Just finding a way to, I was a college athlete, so you're always trying to fine tune your body and your team. And so that's what I'm looking at with this, is a way that we can make our school continue to grow. Because with CRT and gender politics and everything else going on, it's helped our school. I mean, it's, what the devil meant for bad, the Lord is making it good. So.
Well, I guess that's the advantage that we have, is that technology is always changing. That's why you need to be on technology, because at some point you're going to run into something new. Years ago it was, when we first started, it was setting up computer labs, high-end computer labs, one internet connection when that was available. Then it was having mobile computers, and it went to laptops, and it went to one-to-one, then it went to iPads, it went to Chrome. So we've been iterating constantly for the last 30 years. Yeah, it's always something different.
Yeah,
sir.
I've been doing it for 30 years, so that's what's funny when somebody brought that up. I had gone back to school in '90, and all of a sudden they've got the computers in the library. All the basketball players were in there, and they were like, I'm watching keyboard, going, we didn't do that in high school. I mean, the girls did that. They all had the keyboard. I was like, I am so far behind.
No, I just appreciate the different presentations. Laura and I, again, just to reframe on focusing on curiosity and building digital citizenship, how to help teachers become certified in different ways. A lot of times come into this as an administrator, you got like 18 zillion things going on in your head. And so there's things that I'm building connections or making connections on my side. I wouldn't necessarily come in looking for that, but then making that connection. Jimmy, again, your presentation on kind of considerations to be thinking about in terms of, you know, the different hardware pieces or whatever that might look like for services from you, is also helpful. And I'm, again, thinking through some other things for us. And I'm sorry to put your name from curriculum track. Michael, thank you, Michael. Anything related to existential, I was hoping you'd bring in Soren Kierkegaard. You know, but again, I love the, you know, kind of that Marzano approach, right? Like simplifying those questions, and then how do we use those questions to help simplify teachers, to give them that freedom and flexibility, right? That you guys are talking about. So I just appreciate it.
Yeah, we're probably gonna take that presentation and cut it out and make that as a unique offering, because that was really good how you broke it down. I think that's gonna have a life of its own, that video right there. Do you guys want to say anything?
Other than I'm really pleased that we partnered, and we are partners, and because there's obviously deficiencies for, like, on my end, because I'm not an instructor, I don't get into, you know, the educational technology side. But at the same time, you know, that's their strength, and mine is in you know, just a real nitty-gritty IT work, and so I think it's been fruitful so far, and so yeah, best way to, you know, to learn more about us and to get a hold of us is to also work through them, work through, you know, contact earnings.
Yep. It's been a good partnership so far. We're really thankful for you, Jimmy. Yeah, Michael.
Yeah, we're just kind of getting started. We know each other. You've been familiar with curriculum tracking, but we're just kind of starting our partnership. And I think the role, maybe the best way to understand it, kind of going to your question, is as you bring in technology pieces, especially integrating it with other parts of your curriculum, there's always a question, especially for administrators, to ask, so what do we teach? What is our curriculum? It's not a stack of textbooks. It's not state standards. We are unique, and yet we pull from a lot of different resources. So how do we manage that? How do we maintain that? How do we promote that? Especially in the cultural climate that we find ourselves in, where there's more and more families saying, so what are you about? I know you're a Lutheran school and you're not for some of this whatever political stuff, but what do you teach? Curriculum track is about collecting that in a transparent way. And so our partnership with BTE is, as you adopt pieces of their curriculum, you can plug it in to your school-wide curriculum and say, here is how it all fits together. So,
and what's fascinating, the reason I always was attracted to curriculum track, when you're a school member of curriculum track, you have access to all of the other schools.
yeah.
Their layouts, their
Ultimate collaboration.
yeah, it's all there. And our content is already embedded. All of our learning objectives are embedded. So if you're trying to do this skill, you know, at this time, and you need a unit, it says, oh, Technology has that, and it's just cleaned. So it's a beautiful partnership. I think what you guys have built is amazing. I talk to people about curriculum mapping all the time, and it's not always a pleasant conversation. So I tell them, well, there's a tool to help you, and it's already, you can populate using other people's maps. You know, if there's another school at your level in a different state, you can pull it in. It's ingenious, really is.
Yeah.
But I think for me, it's a lot of affirmation or reaffirmation. I've been the guy all along. This is my 37th year in the ministry, so I've been the guy that if there was a new tech toy, I grabbed it, learned it, then taught it. And so I've always been very big on collaboration. How about email? I remember the emails coming in one letter at a time. In 1985, in my first call, I was like, that is so cool. And it was just coming from the other office, you know, so, you know, so we got, how do we use this? I think for the collaboration is huge. PLNs are huge. That's what I've been pushing my current staff and getting involved with. Just like, for instance, I've been on the board of directors with OCQ, and now active with Q. I don't know if you're familiar with Q, but Q uses for education and statewide. You know, developing those resources. You know, going against that, teachers pay teachers. It should be teachers give. Teachers give teachers. At all times, so that collaborative piece is huge. The other piece is moving in, like in the IT world, is moving from that IT guy on staff that's fixing everything to being the tech coach. And the coaching is I think probably the biggest piece that I find that's what I do most of my time when it comes to technology with my teachers. Is constantly coaching them to use new tools and trying to break them out of some of the old old habits of drill and kill, and there are some things that we can do differently, so. Anyway.
I think you need to run back to your office and give teachers.com and start a company. You know my brain thinks, that's an idea right there. I like how that works. Anyway, you guys want to chime in on QA, anything, any conversation starters?
Yeah, I just want to say, you know, the goal is supporting the end users, right, which is you guys. How can we help you do what you need to be done better? You know, for my big wheelhouse right now is I'm seeing the cyberbullying right happening that's coming into the classrooms. So what are the tools that you guys need to combat that, to turn the tide around from cyberbullying to cyber loving, right? How can we support you? And that's really what we're here to do. That's why I was excited to come today to be in a principal's forums, because I want to know how to care and support and come alongside our principals. So let me know if there's something you're like, you know, hey, I'm going to email you, Laurelyn, because this is what we're encountering at our schools. And okay, let's see what we need to do to support our end users.
Laurelyn has become the big heart of our company, just bringing people in with caring. But do you have any suggestions for Laurelyn? But what are the problems you're facing that she could probably be working on? She mentioned bullying. Anything else happening in the classrooms?
I think we deal with that, you know, about like an annual assembly or, you know, we check the box, but just to make it something that's a consistent thread throughout the year.
Yeah.
So resources.
She wants resources. Anything?
I think one of the challenges for principals now and moving in the future is how do you manage the data? How do you manage all this data? Talking, you know, teacher profiles and student identities and, you know, everything going to the cloud. And, you know, that's something the school principal really needs to have like kind of a team around. You know, it's no longer just, you know, writing the student handbook and then everyone adhere to the rules. So I think, and in my experience, every school does it a little differently, but there's certain pieces to that need to happen. So all the information is safe and, you know, we're tracking progress properly, but that's a discussion I think every school site needs to have. And the more there can be kind of certain protocols put in place, I think it's better for the schools and ultimately better for the students.
So I think I'm going to wrap up a little bit early, but just to leave you with a couple thoughts. You know, leadership is critical to any successful program. You're leaders, you're here, you're learning, you're taking information back to your schools. And I think the next level down is teachers. You know, teachers are the ones that are every day working with students, working with curriculum, having how many problems a day do they solve? 1,500 problems a day.
I love that.
that was a powerful.
That's why we have decision fatigue.
Yes.
Yeah, and what I've learned, you know, in 30 years, when we first started working with schools and helping them integrate technology, the biggest hurdle is getting teachers up to speed. I mentioned the teacher pushing the little paddle, and that's still the problem. That's still the biggest issue. Teachers still, you have a variety of ability levels. That is still where we see a lot of the pain points. The IT support, we've kind of figured that out. If anything, there's too many curriculum resources out there. It's finding the right ones now. But teachers are still real people with real time constraints, with real families, with real lesson plans. And this is where we really found a niche to help you provide resources for teachers. And that's okay. Give me 5 minutes, 2 minutes. Finding resources for teachers, curriculum resources, and then finding the right professional development opportunities based on what they need, not something that's been pre-framed. And we made that mistake years ago by giving teachers a 100-question assessment. So right off the bat, they hated us. Right off the bat, we tested them 100
Nobody
questions.
wants to test.
And so we shifted that. We found that having more of a dialogue with teachers. What are you doing? What would you like to be doing? What have you seen that's valuable? How can we support you? What tools are you using? What are you paying for? What's the school paying for? Just having that open-ended conversation where now we're here as their support person rather than their testing organization. And it's really created a whole new dynamic with how we help teachers. But that assessment opportunity with the professional development, with the curriculum resources, and Laura mentioned the fact that there's going to be times you want something custom, but we could develop that custom integrated project. And now we have tools to help you manage your curriculum. We have tools to help keep your infrastructure up to speed. We really become a full circle service provider. So trying to avoid the sales pitch, but let you know who we are, what we do, and we're here, we're available. So beyondk12.com is our website. There's a form on there where you can get a free assessment where we'll come out and just have a conversation and see what you're doing and see if there's a connection. We do work with a number of schools within your district, which, I mean, EMAS we've been with, what, 12 years maybe? We're with Loving Savior. Hope she's doing better. So we're part of the community. We've been at your conference as long as I can remember. So thank you for your time. We appreciate it. We will make this available on video as well. If you want to share it with other people, please share it. We're probably going to chop up some of the presentations as well to make those easily digestible. And we will be sending out some resources to kind of fulfill everything. Good. All right, lunchtime. Thank you, everybody.